Oh man. Whew. Survived that one. What's up YouTube fam, Robbie C here. This week we are at a brand new track in the Bluff Park area called the Children's Fresh Air Farm. This short little 9-hole course is super beginner friendly and a great track to come out and start practice throwing your putters. But the key to scoring well in any round is to make sure that your putter is on. The more that I work with beginners, I see the putting green as an area where confidence goes to die, unfortunately. It can be so defeating to feel like you can be excellent off the tee, and yet unless you land the disc right here next to the basket, you're gonna have a hard time coming off the course with a score you're proud of. What I want to do today is give you 3 quick tips I believe you can start using to help make putts from a farther distance. Are you guys ready to start draining some putts? Let's go. Our first tip is all about where you want your putt to go. Notice that when I'm standing at 10 to 15 feet, so often while I'm putting, I don't want to miss and have a huge comeback putt, and so I just give it enough power to get all the way to the basket. This works out really well for some putts, but it doesn't necessarily set us up to succeed, especially from longer distances. The key being that if I leave a putt short, it never has a chance to go in the basket. But if I leave it high, it could possibly get in. I feel like it's also important to note that if I'm worried about the comebacker, that I'm not focused on making the putt. So once again, our first tip is to focus on where you want the putt to go. Not only do I want the putt to go in the basket, but I actually want to imagine that there's someone standing behind the basket trying to catch my disc, and I'm really trying to get to them with my putt, not just inside the chains. Notice that when I put more power on the disc, trying to get it to go through the chains, it actually flies with a straighter, smoother, and more consistent flight than if I just wobble it all the way to the basket. Truly, this first tip comes down to confidence, and confidence only comes from practice. No matter what distance you're putting from, you want to try to line up your putt and make sure that you're sending it into the hands of your friend who's encouraging you behind the basket. But Robbie, what happens if I sail it past the basket and have a comebacker? That's okay, because you're gonna step up to your comeback putt and putt with just as much confidence. Your friend just moves to the other side of the basket and catches from over there. Once again, if we're always worried about the comeback putt, then we're never focused on actually making the first one. Line up that putt and don't just give it enough to get to the basket, give it enough to get through the basket. All right, so some of you right now are saying, I wish my putt could go through the basket, but I just don't have enough power to get it there. Can you help fix that, Mr. YouTuber? Yes, we can. I believe there are 2 ways for you to start generating more power on your putt, and thankfully, we've got 2 tips left. So let's jump into the first one that applies to all types of putts. If I were here trying to lift this tree up just using my arms, you can do it, be strong. Tell all those naysayers in middle school they were wrong. You would call me a fool. How would I generate more power trying to lift this thing up? I'd use these legs, even though the branches are trying to hide them. The exact same rule for power applies to our putting. So often we can lean over into our putt. It's almost like we're leaning forward in anticipation, trying to hope that it gets to the basket. But you have very little power when you're all the way over your disc like so, rather than being back in your form and using your feet to engage into the throw. Whether you're using a staggered stance or a straddle stance, engaging your body and lowering your weight into your feet is a key to generating more power. Think about someone like Kevin Jones, who goes down into a straddle and explodes into his throw. The power comes from the ground, through the feet, into the legs, and out through the throw. The same thing happens on a staggered stance, where your weight comes back into the leg and then pushes forward into the throw. I also feel it's important to say that if you're struggling with 15 to 20 foot putts right now, these are definitely going to help you start banging those putts, but it doesn't necessarily mean that tomorrow you're going to be 100% from circle 2. But if you ever want to start putting in circle 2 consistently, then you need to start using these tips inside the shorter putts as well. Remember, we load back and we explode forward. We load back and we explode forward. This works on both the staggered stance and it works on our straddle as well. So you know where you want to put the putt, you know you're using your legs for power, and some people are pushing back saying, well, Calvin Heimberg putts great and it doesn't look like he uses his legs at all. Well, first off, he does. It's a minimal weight shift, but the weight shift is definitely there. But the secret to Calvin Heimberg's power is our final tip of the day, and I'll never forget the first time I heard these words used pertaining to disc golf, because I really thought we had moved on to some deep science rather than just slinging some plastic. I first heard my coach, Michael Strauss, talk about it in a video, and when I told my brother, who's a physical therapist, about it, he 100% agreed that these biomechanics definitely add power to your putt. So what are these two wonderful secrets? We're talking about pronation and supination. I would do a massive injustice trying to talk about these, so I put the definitions right here. But in simple man's terms, pronation is when you take your palm from facing up to facing down, and supination is when you take your wrist from pointing down to pointing up. If you're a spin putter, focusing on pronation is going to add massive rotations to your throw, creating even more power and consistency from farther away. The opposite can be said for push putters. If you focus on supinating and turning that wrist to the sky, you'll notice how much more pop you get in the disc, getting it to go even farther, even easier. You might hear it referred to as a finger pop, but combining either pronation or supination and extending those fingers gets the disc to quickly fly out of your hand and start spinning at an incredibly fast rate. As you can see, I'm not the best spin putter in the world, but as a push putter, one of the big things that changed the game for me was where my index finger was placed on the disc to help generate more power. I used to avoid beaded putters because I felt like my finger getting hung up on the bead created a less consistent flight because my finger was on top. But when I changed my grip to having this index finger more underneath the rim, it created the ability for me to lift the disc off of my finger, which generated more power, more snap, and more consistent releases. And it also gave the bead somewhere to sit on my finger specifically. But like all things in disc golf, it takes time and it takes practice. If you really want to start making some longer putts and having that confidence on the putting green, find out what your comfort circle is and spend time getting comfortable inside of it. Because of these tips, I have the power and confidence to know I can make 15 to 20 foot putts. And being able to consistently make 15 and 20 foot putts makes me way less afraid of 30 and 40 foot putts. This might be the worst place to film a video ever. I hope these tips were helpful, and I can't talk about putting without mentioning my two favorite putting tools. Disc Dot is a putting aid that helps you focus in on a specific target inside the basket and gives you immediate feedback on whether you hit it or not. It would be impossible to count the number of strokes I've saved and confidence I've gained simply because I use Disc Dot during all of my practice putting sessions. And during those sessions, I also use Perfect Putt 360. This app adds fun and a little bit of pressure to your practice sessions, which makes it way more translatable to the actual course. Be sure to check out both of these awesome products in the links below. I hope you have an amazing week and that you start hitting putts from way farther than you ever thought possible and with more confidence than you could ever dream of. But for now, I'm gonna leave you with the birdie.